This is Fresh Tracks Weekly. The majority of the news stories in the world of hunting this week have to do with Mike Lee's attempt to sell our public land, which is great to see so much reporting on it. Randy's going to be here to give us an update on the matter shortly. But before that, here are a few other stories that caught our attention. The Department of Agriculture recently announced that they are rescinding the roadless rule, which will open Forest Service land, closed roads, make new road construction much easier, and open up timber harvest on nearly 59 million acres. The roadless rule is a Clinton-era rule that has been in place since 2001. At the time, it was a result of over 600 public hearings which received input from 1.6 million Americans, with 95% in support. The recent decision to remove these protections is to align with President Trump's executive order of, quote, unleashing prosperity through deregulation. Further rationale was given by the Secretary of Agriculture, stating that the rule was overly restrictive and didn't allow for forests to be properly managed for fire risk, along with hurting jobs and economic development. Responding to the Secretary's comments on wildfire mitigation, backcountry hunters and anglers cited data showing that more roads likely increase the risk of wildfires, as most fires are human-caused and 90% of wildfires start within a half mile of a road. One of the areas that will be most affected by the removal of this rule is the Tongass National Forest in southeast Alaska, reopening a significant portion of land to timber harvest. Outdoor Life quoted an Alaska resident who said that the logging industry in southeast Alaska is heavily subsidized by the federal government and that it costs more to log old growth than it makes, claiming that over the last 40 years, it's cost U.S. taxpayers $1.7 billion to sell Tongass forest trees. Chris Wood of Trout Unlimited also said that he doesn't think that the timber industry even wants to get into those areas because of how controversial and expensive they are, going on to say that when the Department of Agriculture gets to the rulemaking on this matter, they'll likely realize how wildly unpopular getting rid of the roadless rule is. In Oregon, a petition for a ballot initiative to criminalize any form of injuring or killing animals is circulating again, gaining signatures, despite the completely illogical nature of the proposal. This is the third attempt at getting it on the ballot, failing in 2022 and again in 2024. Every time I see it, it almost feels like it's not worth mentioning, yet a surprising amount of people continue to sign the petition, which would require around 117,000 individuals to make it onto the ballot in 2026. The initiative is to make any form of animal cruelty illegal unless it's considered self-defense or veterinary practice. It would certainly make all hunting and fishing illegal in addition to ranching of any kind. The social and economic impact of something like this are hard to even fathom. Again, why it seems ridiculous to even talk about. But in all the delusion of the individuals who are signing this petition, you have to ponder if this were to make it on the ballot and voters were unaware of the consequences and simply thought that they were voting against animal cruelty, could this pass? It seems like the answer should be no, but I continue to be surprised all the time. Speaking of petitions, another one in Colorado seeks to ban all sales of fur within the state. The Center for Biological Diversity submitted a petition to Colorado Parks and Wildlife to ban the sale, barter, or trade of furs within the state, claiming that fur bearer populations have been decimated. The Sportsmen's Alliance is claiming that this is just another attempt to chisel away at hunting and trapping rights in Colorado, as they have been attempting different ways to ban hunting of mountain lions and bobcats. The argument that the Center for Biological Diversity is putting forward is that the sale of fur items violates the North American model of wildlife conservation, which one of the tenets is markets for game are eliminated. I'll give it to them that this is an interesting argument, because prohibiting the sale of wild game meat in the early 1900s is one of the big reasons we were able to restore wildlife populations. And fur bearer sales have been excluded from these rules, and it's been common practice to sell furs for money throughout history to present time. But one of the best takes that I've seen on this matter is an article written for Fair Chase magazine by John F. Organ, where he spells out the history of the North American model and the rationale for why furs can still be bought and sold. He definitely walks a fine line, but it basically boils down to the economics of fur trapping versus wild game meat. The market for game meat is very much driven by economics, while the markets for fur is more of a way for trappers to offset their costs. No one is getting rich selling furs in the current market. The article goes on to tell a cautionary tale of a 1996 ballot initiative in Massachusetts that greatly restricted beaver trapping. In the years following that ballot initiative, the beaver population tripled and complaints of nuisance beavers skyrocketed. Now people will pay up to $500 per beaver to private nuisance wildlife trappers to take care of this problem that used to be taken care of for free by recreational trappers. I would summarize it as this. The current ability to sell furs keeps enough trappers intrigued in the activity to balance out nuisance animals, and it allows people to engage with the resource in a traditional manner. And in reality, just not enough people trap to make it much of an issue. There are already stringent regulations, and numerous state agencies and organizations have gone to great lengths to modernize regulations to meet animal welfare, safety, efficiency, selectivity, and practicality standards to make sure that trapping is carried out in an ethical manner that won't jeopardize fur bearer populations. In Wyoming, hundreds of individuals gathered at the state capitol, amounting to one of the largest protest groups at the capitol in recent years. And the goal was to send the message that public land is not for sale. According to Wildfile, the group consisted of hunters, anglers, snowmobilers, hikers, wildland firefighters, and scientific researchers. This, of course, was in response to Mike Lee's push to sell public land as a part of the budget reconciliation that has fired up sportsmen in a big way over the last week. During this rally, from the steps of the Capitol, Wyoming State Representative Carly Provenza called Congresswoman Harriet Hageman's office, leaving a voicemail with the crowd chanting, "Not for sale." It appears that both Wyoming senators and Congresswomen currently support Mike Lee's efforts to sell public lands, despite many of their constituents urging them to reject this idea. And with that, we're going to jump into our deeper dive where Randy's going to give us an update on what's happening and what we can expect in the coming days.
Happy Friday morning, Marcus.
It's been a wild week.
Yeah. Insane.
Have you fallen asleep yet?
Yeah, I went home yesterday I think I fell asleep on the couch by about 5:30 yesterday.
Well, that's good that you finally got some sleep, but
yeah,
we still don't know exactly what's going to be
right.
This final language that Mike Lee's putting out.
Right.
He is still planning on putting out something, it sounds like.
He's had his butt handed to him multiple times this week by the parliamentarian in the Senate.
Yep.
And for people who don't know, the Senate parliamentarian is the person who looks at bills, specifically budget bills, in the Senate, to make sure that someone's not trying to sneak things in there that have nothing to do with the budget, because budget bills are one thing that are exempt from the 60-vote filibuster rule. So I think it was Tuesday, she told Senator Lee, "Come on, man." Well, he came back with a bunch of other screwball language that we did. We've done videos pretty much every day on it. And last night, Thursday night, everyone thought, well, she's going to rule on it. Well, his staff is kind of asking her, well, tell us how we should word it. Well, that's not the job of the parliamentarian.
Yeah.
The parliamentarian says, draft your bill and I'll tell you if it complies or not. But Senator Lee's been in the Senate for a long time. I think 16 years, 15 years. He's an attorney. He knows all the tricks, all the things. So he's not giving up. But the good news is he's had his teeth handed to him.
Yeah, the public outcry has been crazy. It's been pretty awesome. Another update since last time we talked, there's a quote from Steve Daines.
Montana Senator Daines.
Yep, our Montana or one of our Montana senators. Anyway, he says, quote, "We've got the votes to strike it, and we're ready."
In the Senate.
In the Senate.
So when I was in his office last week, he told me that that's what he was working on. He said, right now I don't know that I have the votes.
Yeah.
But last Friday, the two Idaho senators came out publicly and said, no way. And so we got the two Montana senators that have said no way. And I think there are some others that are standing there behind Senator Daines. And I don't know if anyone saw the response that Senator Lee had to that. But his quote was, "We'll see."
We'll see. Okay. Yeah. If we want to talk some Mike Lee quotes, I have a few other ones written down. The one that I thought was pretty interesting. This is after he's talking about, only doing BLM lands, and he said the vast majority of the land has zero recreational value, which just shows how completely out of touch he is with these lands and the people who use them. But anyway,
the reality is that he's got staffers writing this bill. That's how it works, and most of the people back there would have no real life context by which to understand what these lands represent, what value they have. And so you look at this bill of how it's worded, And it is so poorly worded and represents no understanding of how public lands operate. But that's what we're trying
Yeah.
to do is to fight that. And one of our followers sent this quote by George Bird Grinnell. Now, Grinnell was he's like the father of the American conservation movement.
Yeah.
We would not have a Yellowstone National Park
Yeah.
without George Bird Grinnell.
Yeah, he was like Theodore Roosevelt era, just like,
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at, he had probably a better track record than TR himself in the scheme of things.
Exactly. Roosevelt would look to Grinnell for the ideas. So Grinnell said, the ease and swiftness with which bills to commercialize national parks, national monuments, and national forests slip through Congress seems alarming. And I feel that something should be done to protect the public against these attacks, which usually originate out in a country adjacent to the territory desired by the looters. June 9th, 1920. 105 years ago, George Bird Grinnell is pointing out Congress doing this same exact thing and pointing out that very often the people doing the looting are the ones who live out there or represent the people out there. And here we are. So.
Yep, still similar 100 years later.
Yeah.
So what is the timeline looking like for this? So because you have the parliamentarian, that could be the first backstop on what could stop this, right?
She is an independent person that both parties kind of, they get appointed, and this parliamentarian has served multiple senates. Mm-hmm. So it's not like she got appointed by this president or that president based on political spirit.
Gotcha.
So in this case, she could throw the whole thing out, and then everyone's going to be like, whew.
Yep.
It's possible she leaves it in there, or she forces them to change language. That makes it even worse.
Gotcha. Okay. So there's a few interesting paths that could happen there.
Right.
And then if it makes it to the floor where the Senate's actually hearing this, then at that point somebody could move to strike it from the bill. Correct.
Right. And Senator Daines, in his comment yesterday and my meeting with him last week, made it clear that if he has the votes, he intends to do that.
Yeah.
But let's say he doesn't have the votes.
And it passes out of the Senate.
It goes to the House.
Okay.
Well, a lot of people saw the clip yesterday, which was an excerpt from a podcast that Corey Jacobson and I did with Congressman Mike Simpson from Idaho, who is the vice chair of the House Public Lands Caucus. Congressman Zinke and Congressman Vasquez are the chairs. Well, Congressman Simpson is the vice chair. Mm-hmm. And he just flat out said, to use his language, he said, we stripped it out in the House the first time. The language in the Senate is a zillion times worse than what was in the House that we stripped out. And they're wasting their time because I've talked to Ryan, which is how, they refer to each other, Congressman Ryan Zinke. They're all talk on first name. I've talked to Ryan, and we have the votes to kill it. And yesterday afternoon, as I was told would happen, all of them and 3 other congressmen sent a letter saying, get over it, folks. We intend to kill this when it gets to the House.
Yep.
That was a letter to Speaker Johnson. And Speaker Johnson has conveyed that to Senator Thune, who's kind of his peer over there in the Senate side. So if it gets out of the Senate for some reason, which we hope it doesn't, the House has said they're going to kill it. Mm-hmm. So it's really hard. Everyone's trying to figure out what's the political calculus that Senator Lee has for continuing to do something that is so unpopular even in his home state of Utah. He's just getting pummeled by Utah hunters on this and mountain bikers and, ATVers. But he continues. He does not relent on this. So it's causing a lot of people to say this is very unusual. There's got to be more going on here than maybe what meets the eye. What that is, I don't know. But the way that his people have communicated to others, other staffers, other lobbyists is, well, if we don't get it this time, we will get it. So
Yeah, and that's the concern. I mean, this is, like you said, if there's so many other methods in which this can still happen.
yeah,
And so, and it's happened since, like, referencing the
1920.
the Grinnell quote, but the Sagebrush Rebellion, like there was another example of trying to sell off public lands, and Mike Lee's tried to do this through his tenure. It seems like he's always talked about it.
Yeah.
So this is not going away, and I'm hoping that this is just a big wake up call to all the sportsmen out there, and it seems like it is, because like we said, the public outcry is immense. There's so many people, brands, organizations, individuals that have come out in opposition to this. But hopefully we can keep the momentum going, because it's not, even if it dies today, it's not going, the idea and that movement is not going to go away.
Right.
It's going to come back. There are people who are going to keep pushing it.
Yeah. And
so
I think one of the favors Mike Lee has done for all of us in this process, he finally put this idea to text, to black and white, so that everybody, even people inclined to discount that, that's just election talk. That don't worry about that. Now it's in text.
Yeah.
And we can build maps based on what he put in text.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's no longer this abstract, esoteric concept. And I think that all the supposed advisors, the experts who were advising the Republicans on this, got a serious kick in the crotch of because when it was just this abstract concept, their voters, well, I'm not saying all, but it was easy for them to pitch to some of their supporters that, no, don't worry about that. And people trusted them. Well, now, there it is. It's right there for everybody to read. And I think Senator Lee has done us all a favor in that respect.
Yeah.
He has put it out there. Now we know exactly what they've been talking about when they put in their party platforms these crazy things like sell the public lands or transfer the public lands or whatever, dispose of the public lands. When they put in Project 2025, they let Pendley, one of the guys who's he's been as zealous about this as Lee has. They put in there transferring, disposing of the federal land.
Yeah, well, and it's been a part of the Republican Party platform.
It has.
For years. And so that's another thing. If we can get momentum, like, tell them to just pull that language out of there.
Yeah.
Like, why is this still an idea?
Right.
And one of the things I'm happy to see, too, is the rhetoric around not 1 acre. There's been a lot of people saying, like, because it's not something worth compromising on,
right?
Which is what, I feel like we've seen a lot of times with firearms too. It's like, no, I'm not going to budge on one gun. Like, would we give up 1% of our firearms in the United States? Do you think people would stand for that? No. So why should we on public lands?
Yeah.
And so I'm happy to see that rhetoric and that people aren't willing to compromise. I think that's just like one of the things that's like, we need more access, not less access. Right. And so to even just that there is no compromise in this direction. It's like we're already losing access constantly.
Yep.
So to let more public land go into private hands is just not worth it.
Yeah. And I smile when I see the not 1 acre part, and I'm on board with that.
Yeah.
But I just want people to remember we have FLTFA.
Yeah.
So we have FLTMA, which is Federal Land Policy Management Act from 76, I think. Then we have FLTFA from 2000 and 2018 that says, go identify these isolated parcels, these hard to manage parcels, or parcels within city limits. Put them on a list and let's go through the process. Let's sell those. Let's take the money and go buy other in holdings that improve access.
Right.
So,
And so in that circumstance, then you can make the argument for some
more than, yeah,
for some acreage going away, but it's because it's making it better for the intent,
exactly. Right.
for what that whole public property is intended to do in the first place.
Yeah.
But under Mike Lee's thing, it's nowhere near that.
No.
The pandering to hunters of like what 10% of the proceeds are going to go to I don't even remember.
Hunting, fishing, and recreational amenities.
Amenities,
whatever
like,
the hell that means.
That's just so vague that it could mean anything.
Yeah,
and
when you think about, he's offering us 10%, when already under FLIPFA we get 90%.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
exactly. So it's pretty laughable when you come at it, especially from the perspective of a hunter or someone who recreates on public lands. You're like, this is the worst deal I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just hope that both sides, both parties get rid of the foolishness related to this. Whether it's in their platforms, whether it's in their litigation and their rhetoric, we need productive land management for wildlife, the wild things, and we need access to that. That's as complicated as we need to make it, and I would hope that everybody could be on board with that. Mm-hmm. And if there are places, and we've talked a lot on this podcast, where we think public land management could be better and should be better, I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and work as hard as anyone wants to work on that, because the returns are tangible for us, for wildlife. But selling it is not the answer. That gives Congress the easy out. Congress is why we're in the financial predicament we are in. Congress is why we have frustrations with public land management. And they want to solve their delinquency, their dereliction of not being able to balance a budget, by getting rid of one of their other failures, and that is not directing the agencies and funding the agencies in the way necessary to be able to manage these public lands. So they're looking at it. Some of them are like, well, we can kill two birds with one stone here. Sell these lands, get a one-time shot of revenue, and we'll act like we solved the problem. No matter what it is that frustrates us in any of these things that are in the public eye right now, the budget, the deficit, the amount of debt we have, every one of those come to Congress. Every single problem that frustrates Americans today, about budgets, about public lands, about whatever, Congress could solve those, should have been solving those, and we need to hold them accountable to solve those, and not give them the easy bailout by just selling some public lands or going and borrowing more money that young people like you and our viewers got to pay off someday. I'll be deep in the dirt by that time. But I am not in favor of us continuing to have a Congress that is completely out of touch with financial reality and thinks that a quick hit solution, like some shot of heroin or something, is selling the public lands. So we got to hold them accountable. And we have this week. Mm-hmm. Now, I say we, I mean Americans who have a connection to public lands. When I say we, that's what I'm referring to. Have stood up in the last 2 weeks and just bang the door down. Like, hey, folks, don't go here. We're warning you, don't do this.
That's the thing that's super promising, is it doesn't seem like we necessarily have to convince anybody of how stupid of an idea this is, other than Mike Lee. And there's obviously a few more, but the vast majority of the public outcry has been opposed to this. And there's a thread that was started on Hunt Talk of people compiling every organization and company that they've seen publicly come out against this, and it's kind of cool to see. There's just like a long list of
pages,
pretty big names that have come out of conservation organizations and individuals. It's cool. It's good to see.
And you even sent me one today where Joe Rogan picked up one of Cameron Haynes's videos.
So and Rogan obviously has a huge following, so that's good to see. I think RMEF, DU, the Hunting Public, TRCP, Trout of the Limited, Pheasants Forever, Boone Crockett Club, Wild Sheep,
Yeah.
Congressional Sportsman, like, and then this. I mean, the list goes forever. Like,
Yeah.
but that, like, some big names that you don't necessarily like. Yeah, Rogan and Jocko Willink is another big like kind of influencer that put something out there. So it's cool.
Yeah. It's very cool, and I hope that we use this as one of these pivot points in our community to say, you know what, let's not let the politicians run the day on this. This is not political. It's not partisan. It's American.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that is the case. And every person I have talked to in DC, even yesterday, they're just blown away by the response that they've received. And they all assure me that there's not a single person who is in that Beltway community who hasn't realized the danger of screwing with America's public lands. And just that is a huge accomplishment. And I think everybody deserves a bit of a pat on the back. They deserve maybe a weekend free of all this headache. Go out, enjoy these public lands, fishing, camping, hiking, biking, whatever it is. And when we get back on Monday, I guess we'll because this weekend, the expectation is the parliamentarians going to rule. Mm-hmm. The Senate is going to try push this out by Monday, even if they got to stay and work over the weekend. So we'll definitely probably have to do another video on Monday, but people really rallied to the cause this last week, and it's so impressive. But I hope they all have a great weekend out there on their public lands.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and we got to thank Mike Lee for being so greedy that so many people are fired up and passionate about this in a public space. So yeah, thanks, Mike Lee.
Yeah, thanks, Mike Lee. One of our Hunt Talk members, who's really a jockey with AI, he made a Mike Lee song and he put it out on our Hunt Talk forum. It's
like it's AI generated song, right?
Yeah, but it's really good.
Oh no, it's kind of crazy.
But it's so funny. But I think everybody has chipped in some way, shape, or form, either a relationship they have or a platform they have, or just showing up. Like look at Wyoming yesterday in Cheyenne. They had 500 people show up, kind of spur of the moment.
Yeah.
For a big public lands rally. So there's just all these things going on where so many people in so many different ways from so many different interest groups have given a voice to America's public lands. And I'm gonna agree with you, Marcus. Let's send Mike Lee a thank you for that. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate all your work. Keep at it. Be prepared for Monday. We'll have to get back at it, I'm sure. But until then, enjoy your weekend.
Mike Lee had another scheme up on the hill. Next, try to sell our lands with his political will. Been walking those marble halls since he was small. Now he's dancing to his donors when they call. Don't let the door hit your ass on the way out. When your grand plan crumbles and you feel with doubt, the rules are the rules in that Senate hall. Don't let the door hit your ass when you take that fall. Western senator saw through his game. Said, Mike, that ain't right, that's a crying shame. Those real estate checks might pay for your campaign, but selling off our birthright, that's America's pain.